Some people will do anything to sneak into a billionaire's event. The words rang across the ballroom so sharply that conversations stopped mid-sentence. Crystal chandeliers shimmered overhead, casting warm light across hundreds of guests gathered inside the Grand Regent Hotel in Midtown Manhattan. A string quartet played softly near the stage. Champagne glasses sparkled. Cameras flashed. And in the center of it all, a stream of deep red wine slid slowly down the front of Monica Hayes' ivory dress. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The entire room seemed frozen between shock and curiosity. Victoria Sterling lowered her empty wine glass and tilted her head with a smile that looked practiced. At 42, she was known almost as well as her billionaire brother. She attended every charity gala, every luxury fundraiser, every elite social event worth photographing. People laughed at her jokes before she finished telling them. People agreed with her opinions before she expressed them. And tonight, surrounded by investors, executives, celebrities, and politicians, she clearly expected the room to follow her lead once again. Honestly, Victoria said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, security should really be more careful about who gets invited. A few nervous chuckles drifted through the crowd. Monica didn't react. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She simply looked down at the wine soaking into the fabric of her dress before lifting her eyes back toward Victoria. The calmness unsettled people more than anger would have. Victoria expected outrage. She expected embarrassment. Instead, Monica stood perfectly still, as if the insult had landed somewhere far away. Around them, guests began forming a loose circle. Curiosity spread through the ballroom like electricity. Some people glanced between the two women. Others quietly pulled out their phones. Near the edge of the crowd, Olivia Brooks, one of the event coordinators, immediately sensed something was wrong. She recognized Monica's face. Not completely. Not yet. But enough to know this situation felt dangerous in a way Victoria didn't understand. "Ma'am," Olivia began carefully, stepping forward. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding." Victoria waved her off without even looking at her. "There's no misunderstanding," she said. "I know exactly what I'm seeing." Monica remained silent. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Long enough for the entire room to become uncomfortable. Victoria's confidence seemed to grow with every passing moment. She adjusted the diamond bracelet on her wrist and smiled toward a group of wealthy donors standing nearby. "You know," she continued, "some people see an invitation and assume it means they belong in every room." The words hung in the air. A few guests shifted awkwardly. Others stared at Monica, waiting for a response. But Monica Hayes simply folded her hands in front of her and looked around the ballroom. Her eyes moved slowly across the lavish decorations, the investment banners, the media cameras, and finally toward the massive digital screen behind the stage where tomorrow's most anticipated business announcement would be revealed. Then she looked back at Victoria. Her expression never changed. And somehow that made the room even quieter. Because while everyone else saw a woman standing in a stained dress, Monica looked like someone studying a problem that had already been solved. And Victoria Sterling had no idea that the most expensive mistake of her life had just begun dripping down the front of that ivory gown. Monica Hayes did not reach for a napkin. She did not rush to clean the stain. She did not offer an explanation, a defense, or a single apology for occupying space in a room that clearly believed it belonged to someone else. The red wine remained on the ivory fabric like a mark everyone could see and nobody could stop staring at. That was what unsettled them. Most people understood anger. Most people understood embarrassment. They understood raised voices and emotional reactions. What they did not understand was a woman standing perfectly calm after being publicly humiliated in front of some of the most powerful people in New York City. Victoria Sterling noticed it too. Her smile tightened slightly. The reaction she wanted never came. Around them, the ballroom continued to hum. With nervous energy, investors whispered behind champagne glasses. Donors exchanged glances. Several guests quietly stepped closer, pretending to admire the floral arrangements while positioning themselves near the unfolding drama. At the center of it all stood Monica, composed as ever. She looked less like a victim and more like someone taking notes. Olivia Brooks moved closer through the crowd. Her tablet was still in her hand. She quickly checked the guest registry again. The name was there. Monica Hayes. Confirmed. Executive-level access. Olivia felt her stomach tighten. Something about that name seemed familiar. She could not place it yet, but instinct told her this situation was becoming dangerous for the wrong people. Victoria crossed her arms. "You are awfully quiet," she said. Usually people say something when they are caught somewhere they do not belong. A few uncomfortable laughs echoed nearby. Monica finally lifted her eyes toward Victoria. "Is that what you think happened?" she asked. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Victoria seemed encouraged by the question. "I know exactly what happened." Monica nodded once. "Interesting." That single word somehow made Victoria more irritated than any argument could have. Across the ballroom, servers paused beside silver trays. Event staff exchanged worried looks. The atmosphere no longer felt like a celebration. It felt like a room waiting for a verdict. Monica glanced toward the stage again. Tomorrow morning, the financial press would be talking about only one thing. A major partnership announcement expected to reshape multiple markets across the country. Analysts had spent months speculating about it. Reporters had flown in from across the United States, hoping for exclusive coverage. The deal represented years of planning and billions of dollars in future growth. Yet standing there beneath the chandeliers, Monica seemed completely unconcerned about the attention surrounding it. Victoria stepped closer. "You know what I think?" she asked. "I think people spend so much time pretending to be important that eventually they start believing it." Several guests shifted uncomfortably. Olivia could see the crowd changing. At first they had been entertained. Now they were becoming uneasy. There was something about Monica's stillness that made Victoria's confidence look increasingly reckless. Monica studied her for a moment before speaking again. Sometimes people become so certain of their assumptions that they stop seeing reality. Victoria laughed. "That sounds like something someone says when they have been exposed." Monica simply smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not a defensive smile. It was the kind of smile that appeared when a person already knew how a story would end. And somewhere in the growing silence of the ballroom, the first cracks in Victoria Sterling's certainty had already begun to form. The crowd continued to grow. What had started as an awkward exchange between two women was becoming the center of the entire evening. Conversations near the bar had stopped completely. Guests who had been discussing investments, philanthropy, and market forecasts now found themselves watching something far more compelling. Victoria Sterling stood comfortably at the center of the attention. She had spent years moving through rooms like this one. She knew how influence worked. She knew how quickly people followed confidence. And at that moment, she believed the room still belonged to her. "Look around," Victoria said, gesturing toward the guests surrounding them. "These people built companies. They built fortunes. They earned their place here." Her eyes settled on Monica. The difference is that they did not have to pretend. Several people exchanged uncomfortable looks. The comment landed harder than the previous ones. Even those who had quietly tolerated Victoria's behavior were beginning to sense she was crossing a line. Monica remained calm. The wine stain had dried slightly against the ivory fabric, but she seemed entirely unconcerned by it. She stood with the same quiet confidence she had carried since entering the ballroom. That confidence was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Near the registration desk, Olivia Brooks checked her tablet for the third time. The guest profile remained exactly where it had been before. Monica Hayes. Special clearance. Private. Executive designation. Olivia's pulse quickened. She finally remembered where she had seen the name. It was not from tonight's guest list. It was from business magazines, industry reports, and conference headlines. The realization hit her all at once. Before she could speak, another voice entered the conversation. "Is there a problem here?" The question came from a man wearing an event security badge. He approached cautiously, clearly responding to reports from concerned staff members. Victoria immediately smiled. "Actually, yes," she said. "I think someone may have wandered into an event that was never meant for them." The security officer looked toward Monica. "Ma'am, may I see your invitation?" Several guests immediately shifted closer. The atmosphere tightened. Monica looked at him calmly. "Of course." Before she could reach for her evening clutch, Victoria interrupted. "Trust me. Save yourself the trouble." The officer hesitated. He glanced between the two women. Something about Monica's composure made him uncertain. Most people placed in uncomfortable situations either became defensive or eager to explain themselves. Monica did neither. She simply waited. The silence forced everyone else to fill it. "You know," Victoria continued, speaking to the surrounding crowd. There is a reason these events have standards. A few people nodded politely. Others looked away. The room was beginning to divide. Some guests still followed Victoria's lead because of her family name. Others were becoming increasingly uncomfortable with the assumptions she continued to make. Monica watched the shift happen in real time. She noticed the hesitation in people's eyes. She noticed the growing doubt. Most importantly, she noticed that Victoria did not. Confidence had become certainty. Certainty had become arrogance. And arrogance was making her careless. The security officer finally cleared his throat. Perhaps we should verify everything before making assumptions. For the first time that evening, Victoria's smile flickered. Only slightly. Only for a second. But Olivia saw it. Monica saw it too. Because beneath the confidence and expensive jewelry and social status, Victoria Sterling was beginning to sense something she could not yet explain. The room was no longer moving with her. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, it was starting to move against her. Olivia Brooks could not stay silent any longer. The realization sitting on her tablet felt heavier with every passing second. She stepped forward again, this time with more confidence than before. "Victoria," she said carefully, "I think we should verify the guest list." The suggestion sounded reasonable to everyone except Victoria Sterling. Her expression hardened immediately. "There is nothing to verify," she replied. "I know exactly who belongs at my family's events." The words landed with the certainty of someone who had rarely been challenged. Olivia glanced toward Monica, then back at her screen. The information remained unchanged. Monica Hayes. Executive clearance. Priority designation. Restricted access level. The kind of profile that appeared only a few times on an entire event roster. Olivia felt her pulse quicken. "I am serious," she said. "There may be something you are missing." Victoria laughed softly. "The only thing being missed is common sense." Several guests looked uncomfortable. The security officer remained where he was, unwilling to act before understanding the situation. Monica watched the exchange quietly. Her calm presence had become the center of gravity in the room. Every comment from Victoria seemed to push more people toward doubt. Every silent response from Monica seemed to pull them further away from certainty. A man from a nearby investment firm spoke up carefully. Maybe checking the list would settle everything. Another guest nodded. "That seems fair." Victoria turned toward them. "Fair?" she asked. "You want me to pretend this is some kind of mystery?" She gestured toward Monica's stained dress. "The situation is obvious." Monica finally spoke. "Interesting word." Victoria folded her arms. "What is obvious?" Monica's voice remained calm. "History is full of people who confused assumptions with facts." The comment drew silence from the crowd. It was not aggressive. It was not emotional. Yet somehow it carried more weight than anything said all evening. Olivia looked down once more. Then she saw an additional notation attached to Monica's profile. Her eyes widened. She zoomed in to confirm she had read it correctly. The designation was real. Her breath caught for a moment. Suddenly everything made sense. The private security clearance. The restricted executive access. The unusual confidentiality markers. Olivia looked up toward Monica with a completely different expression. Victoria noticed. "What?" she asked sharply. Olivia hesitated. "I think you should stop." Victoria blinked. "Stop what?" "Talking." The answer arrived so quickly that several guests turned toward Olivia in surprise. Victoria stared at her. "Excuse me." Olivia swallowed hard. "I am trying to help you." For the first time all evening, uncertainty appeared in Victoria's eyes. Only briefly. Only for a second. But it was there. Monica saw it. The crowd saw it too. Something was changing. The room could feel it. The assumptions that had seemed so solid 10 minutes earlier were beginning to crack. Yet Victoria pushed forward anyway. "No," she said firmly. "I know exactly what kind of person I am dealing with." Monica looked at her for a long moment. Then a small smile appeared. Not because she was amused. Not because she was angry. It was the smile of someone watching a door close while everyone else still believed it was open. And somewhere beyond the ballroom, far away from the music and crystal chandeliers, decisions had already begun moving toward consequences that nobody in the room was prepared to face. The ballroom felt smaller now. The music still played somewhere in the background, but it sounded distant, almost disconnected from the tension gathering beneath the chandeliers. Guests stood frozen between curiosity and concern. Nobody wanted to leave. Nobody wanted to miss what happened next. Monica Hayes remained exactly where she had been from the beginning. Calm, silent, unmoved. Yet inside her mind, something had shifted. Her eyes dropped briefly to the dark stain across her dress. The deep red color pulled her backward through time. Suddenly, she was not standing inside one of Manhattan's most exclusive charity galas. She was 16 years old again. Charlotte, North Carolina. A summer afternoon. Her mother had saved for months to take her to a prestigious hotel luncheon celebrating local scholarship recipients. Monica remembered how proud her mother looked walking through those doors. She remembered the cream-colored dress she wore. She remembered the careful way she carried herself. And she remembered the woman at the reception desk. The woman had smiled at everyone else. But when Monica and her mother approached, the smile disappeared. Questions followed. Assumptions followed. Doubt followed. Other guests entered without hesitation while her mother was repeatedly asked to verify information that had already been confirmed. Monica could still remember the embarrassment in her mother's eyes. Not anger. Not frustration. Embarrassment. The kind that comes from being treated as if you must constantly prove you belong. That memory never left her. Years later, when Monica built companies, negotiated acquisitions, and appeared on magazine covers, she discovered something disappointing. Success changed bank accounts faster than it changed assumptions. Different rooms, different people, same judgment, same questions, same disbelief. The stain on her dress seemed almost symbolic now. Another reminder. Another attempt to define her before learning who she was. Back in the ballroom, Victoria continued speaking, unaware of the memories unfolding behind Monica's calm expression. You see, Victoria said to several guests nearby, people like this always rely on mystery. They never answer direct questions. The statement earned far fewer reactions than she expected. The room had changed. People were listening differently now. They were watching Monica instead of Victoria. Olivia noticed it too. The crowd no longer seemed entertained. They seemed concerned. Concerned that something important was being misunderstood. Concerned that a mistake was growing larger with every passing minute. Monica finally looked up. Her eyes moved across the faces surrounding her. Investors, executives, journalists, donors, powerful people who spent their lives making judgments about risk and opportunity. Yet many of them had quietly accepted assumptions without evidence. The irony was impossible to miss. Victoria stepped forward again. Why are you smiling? She asked. Monica's expression softened slightly. Because I have seen this before. Victoria frowned. Seen what? Monica looked directly at her. People becoming so confident in a story that they stop paying attention to reality. The answer lingered in the air. Nearby conversations disappeared completely. Even the security officer remained silent. Nobody seemed eager to interrupt anymore. For the first time that evening, Victoria appeared genuinely unsettled. Not because she understood the truth. Not yet. But because she was beginning to realize that everyone else might discover it before she did. And once that happened, there would be no way to reverse what came next. The silence stretched across the ballroom like a tightening wire. Nobody seemed interested in the charity auction anymore. Nobody cared about the celebrity guests or the photographers lining the walls. Every eye remained fixed on Monica Hayes. Victoria Sterling sensed the shift but refused to acknowledge it. She continued standing tall, convinced that confidence alone could control the room. You still have not answered a single question, Victoria said. That tells me everything I need to know. Monica looked at her calmly. No, she replied. It tells you everything you want to believe. The response landed with quiet precision. Several guests lowered their eyes. Others exchanged knowing looks. Victoria's certainty was beginning to sound less like authority and more like stubbornness. Olivia Brooks took a step closer to Monica. She no longer looked nervous. She looked concerned. Deeply concerned. The information on her tablet had removed all doubt. She understood exactly who Monica was. More importantly, she understood what was scheduled to happen tomorrow morning. The announcement that had drawn hundreds of influential people into this room depended on decisions that very few individuals in America could make. Monica happened to be one of them. Olivia opened her mouth to speak. Monica gave the slightest shake of her head. Not a warning. Not a command. Simply a request. Wait. Olivia immediately understood. Across the ballroom, several executives checked their phones. News alerts, market updates, and business messages flowed constantly through gatherings like this. Nobody noticed Monica reaching into her evening clutch. She removed her phone and glanced at the screen. The movement seemed insignificant, yet something about it immediately captured Olivia's attention. Monica selected a contact. One name: Naomi Carter, her chief of staff, the person responsible for coordinating decisions worth billions of dollars. Monica lifted the phone to her ear. The call connected almost instantly. "Good evening," Naomi answered. Monica's voice remained calm. "Naomi." "Yes, Monica." Monica looked around the ballroom one final time. Her gaze moved across the guests, the stage, the giant digital display, and finally toward Victoria. "Shut everything down." The words were simple. 7 syllables. Nothing more. Naomi did not ask for clarification. She did not sound surprised. "Understood," she replied. "Activating review protocol immediately." The call ended. Monica slipped the phone back into her clutch. Nobody nearby understood what had just happened. Nobody except Olivia. Her stomach dropped. She knew enough about corporate operations to recognize the significance of those words. Review protocol was never activated casually, especially not before a public announcement involving billions of dollars. Victoria noticed the exchange and laughed softly. "Calling for help?" she asked. Monica smiled. "Something like that." Victoria shook her head. "You really think a phone call changes anything?" Monica's expression remained unreadable. "You would be surprised what one phone call can change." The room grew quiet again. Guests sensed a turning point even if they could not yet identify it. Somewhere far beyond the ballroom, teams of attorneys, analysts, executives, and advisors were already receiving instructions. Calendars were being cleared. Documents were being reviewed. Decisions were beginning to move. Yet inside the Grand Regent Hotel, Victoria Sterling still believed she was winning. And that was the most dangerous mistake she had made. All night, the effect was not immediate. There were no alarms, no dramatic announcements, no visible signs that anything had changed. That was what made it so powerful. Real authority rarely arrived with noise. It moved quietly, through decisions, approvals, and signatures that most people never saw. Victoria Sterling remained unaware of all of it. She glanced around the ballroom and interpreted the silence as victory. "Well," she said with a satisfied smile, "that was disappointing. I expected something more dramatic." A few people laughed politely, far fewer than before. Monica simply stood there, calm as ever. The stain remained across her dress, but somehow it no longer seemed important. The room itself had changed. The balance had shifted. Guests could feel it even if they could not explain it. Then a sudden movement near the ballroom entrance caught everyone's attention. Several heads turned at once. Conversation stopped. A tall man in a tailored navy suit had just entered the room. Ethan Sterling, Billionaire founder, technology icon. The reason many investors had traveled across the country to attend the event. His arrival immediately drew attention. Victoria's face brightened. Finally, she thought. Reinforcements. Her brother moved quickly through the crowd. Faster than usual. Faster than someone arriving for a routine social appearance. He was looking for someone. Victoria stepped forward confidently. "Ethan," she called out. Perfect timing. He barely looked at her. His eyes continued scanning the room. Then he saw Monica. Everything about his expression changed. He stopped walking. For a brief moment, genuine concern crossed his face. The reaction was impossible to miss. Guests exchanged confused glances. Olivia watched carefully. She already knew what was happening. The rest of the room was seconds away from discovering it. Victoria frowned. "Ethan," she said again. This time he turned toward her. "What happened here?" he asked. The question sounded calm, but there was tension underneath it. Victoria laughed lightly. "Nothing important. We had an issue with a guest." Ethan's eyes returned to Monica. He noticed the wine stain. He noticed the silence surrounding her. Most importantly, he noticed the way people were watching. His expression tightened further. "A guest," he repeated. Monica met his gaze. Neither spoke for several seconds. The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. Then Monica smiled politely. "Good evening, Ethan." Several people immediately noticed the familiarity. Not the familiarity of strangers meeting for the first time. The familiarity of executives who had spent months in negotiation. Ethan nodded once. "Monica." Victoria's confidence vanished. Only slightly, but enough for people nearby to notice. She looked between them. "Wait," she said. "You know each other?" Nobody answered immediately. Monica finally stepped forward. Her voice remained calm, controlled, precise. "Victoria," she said, "you poured wine on the woman responsible for approving your family's largest pending business agreement." Silence crashed over the ballroom. Absolute silence. The words seemed to drain the air from the room. Victoria stared at her, confused at first, then uncertain, then frightened. Olivia closed her eyes briefly. She knew this moment was coming. Around the ballroom, investors, executives, and reporters began connecting the pieces. The guest list, the executive clearance, the confidential meetings, the upcoming announcement. Monica looked directly at Victoria. "You assumed I did not belong here," she said softly. "The reality is that I was one of the reasons this event existed at all." The silence lasted only a few seconds, but it felt much longer. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The entire ballroom stood suspended between disbelief and realization. Victoria Sterling stared at Monica Hayes as though the words had arrived in a language she did not understand. Her confidence, so effortless only moments earlier, had completely disappeared. Ethan Sterling looked away from his sister and toward Monica. "Monica," he said carefully, "I think we should talk." Monica nodded once. "We have been talking for 6 months." The response landed heavily. Several executives in the room immediately recognized what that meant. 6 months of negotiations. 6 months of planning. 6 months of legal reviews, financial projections, and strategic meetings. The partnership scheduled for announcement the following morning was not a rumor. It was real, and Monica Hayes was standing at the center of it. Victoria looked around the room as if searching for someone to tell her this was a misunderstanding. Nobody did. Olivia Brooks lowered her tablet and quietly stepped back. The truth no longer needed help. It had arrived on its own. Ethan exhaled slowly. "I was informed a review protocol was activated." A murmur spread through the crowd. Investors understood exactly how serious those words were. Review protocols did not happen because of minor disagreements. They happened when trust itself became a concern. Monica folded her hands calmly. "Correct." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Was that because of tonight?" Monica looked around the ballroom. Her gaze moved across the guests who had witnessed everything. "Tonight revealed information I did not have before." Nobody missed the meaning behind the statement. She was not talking about spilled wine. She was talking about judgment, culture, character, the things balance sheets could not measure. Then, without warning, the giant digital screen behind the stage flickered. Every head turned. Event staff exchanged confused looks. The scheduled promotional graphics disappeared. The Sterling Technologies logo vanished. Several lines of text appeared instead. White letters against a black background. Internal notice. Strategic Partnership Review Status Updated. Attendance throughout the ballroom froze. Ethan pulled out his phone. A notification appeared almost immediately. Then another. Then another. Across the room, executives began checking their own devices. The same alerts were arriving everywhere at once. Monica's phone vibrated softly. A message from Naomi Carter. "Review completed. Recommendation approved." Monica read it once and slipped the phone away. Ethan's face lost color. He already understood what came next. Victoria did not. "What is happening?" she asked. Nobody answered immediately. Then the screen changed again. One final update appeared beneath the review notice. Partnership negotiations terminated effective immediately. A collective gasp swept through the ballroom. Some guests covered their mouths. Others simply stared. The deal that had dominated business headlines for months was gone. Not delayed. Not postponed. Gone. $2.4 billion in opportunity disappeared with a single decision. Victoria looked from the screen to Ethan, then from Ethan to Monica. The reality finally reached her. The stain on Monica's dress suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the damage created by a few careless assumptions. Monica stood quietly while the room absorbed the consequences. No celebration crossed her face. No satisfaction. Only certainty. Because this had never been about revenge. It had been about trust. And trust, once broken, was often the most expensive thing in the world. No one rushed to leave. No one returned to their conversations. The ballroom remained frozen beneath the glow of crystal chandeliers as the reality settled over everyone present. The announcement that had been expected to dominate financial news for months was gone. Reporters stared at their phones. Investors exchanged stunned looks. Executives quietly recalculated what the termination would mean by sunrise. Yet at the center of it all stood Monica Hayes, as calm as she had been from the moment the first drop of wine touched her dress. Ethan Sterling lowered his phone slowly. The notifications had stopped. There was nothing left to confirm. The decision was final. He looked at Monica and nodded once. Not in agreement. In understanding. Some mistakes could be repaired with apologies. Others revealed something deeper. I understand, he said quietly. Monica returned the nod. I believe you do. Nearby, Victoria Sterling looked as though the room had shifted beneath her feet. For the first time all evening, nobody was paying attention to her status, her family name, or her confidence. They were paying attention to consequences. The same guests who had followed her assumptions now avoided meeting her eyes. The same room that once moved with her now stood in silence around her. Olivia Brooks watched everything unfold. Earlier that evening, she had worried about whether someone would listen. Now she understood that truth had a way of arriving eventually, even when people tried to ignore it. Several guests approached Monica. Some offered quiet words of support. Others apologized for remaining silent. Monica thanked them politely. She carried no anger in her voice. That surprised people. After everything that had happened, many expected bitterness. Instead, they found clarity. One investor finally asked the question everyone had been thinking. Was it really about the wine? Monica looked down briefly at the dark stain across her dress. Then she smiled. No, the ballroom fell quiet again. The wine can be cleaned, she continued. The assumption behind it is harder to remove. Nobody argued. Nobody could. The truth of the statement settled across the room with more force than any speech. Monica glanced toward the stage one final time. The giant screen remained dark. The future that had been planned there no longer existed. Then she looked back at the crowd. Every person deserves dignity before they earn your approval, she said. And if someone has to prove they belong before you treat them with respect, then the problem is not with them. Several heads lowered. Others nodded slowly. Ethan Sterling stood motionless, listening. Victoria said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Monica picked up her evening clutch and turned toward the ballroom exit. The crowd parted naturally as she walked. Not because she demanded it, because they understood. The stain on her dress remained visible beneath the lights. Yet somehow it no longer looked like a mark of humiliation. It looked like evidence. A reminder of everything the evening had revealed. As Monica reached the doors, she paused for a moment and looked back across the room one last time. I did not raise my voice, she said softly. I raised the standard. Then she walked out into the Manhattan night. Behind her, the chandeliers still glowed. The music eventually resumed. The guests would return home. The headlines would arrive in the morning. But long after the wine had been cleaned and the ballroom emptied, one lesson would remain. The stain dried. The consequences did not.